Could LSU and Jacoby Mathews finally unite? Let's talk about it. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we've got a lot to delve into. The transfer portal is officially open, and on Monday, 3 more Tigers jumped into the portal. We'll give you the rundown there. Plus, LSU has made the final 3 for one of the premier edge rushers in this year's portal class. We'll get to that in just a bit. But if you're an LSU fan, you know the name Jacoby Mathews. It's that simple. Jacoby Mathews was a 5-star safety out of Ponchatoula in the class of 2022. He was in the composite of 5-star, the number 32 overall prospect in the country. He was the number 2 safety in America, and he was the number 1 player in Louisiana. And Jacoby Mathews is a guy that, as I understand it, desperately wanted to be an LSU Tiger, wanted to stay home. But in an NIL era, Texas A&M made a better offer than LSU, and Jacoby Mathews ended up taking the better offer and going to College Station. And he performed. He played in 10 games as a true freshman in 2022, starting the final 3. And then as a sophomore in 2023, played in 11 games with 9 starts. The only thing that kept him from starting the entire season was injury. Well, of course, we know the story. After the 2023 season, Jimbo Fisher was fired, or late in that season. Mike Elko was hired. And back at SEC Media Days, had a conversation with some folks who cover Texas A&M. And as the story goes, of course, Jacoby Mathews was there for spring ball with Mike Elko and the new staff. And maybe, like can often happen when a new coaching staff comes in, sometimes things just don't jive. Some players maybe don't conform with the new coach, don't understand the expectation, style, scheme, whatever it may be. And so that's why you'd see a lot of turnover when a new coach comes in. That's what happened. So in the spring portal window, Jacoby Mathews entered the transfer portal. That was in April. But remember, there's a rule in the SEC that you cannot transfer within the SEC in the spring portal window. You can transfer within the SEC and be immediately eligible if you enter the portal in the first portal window. So had Jacoby Mathews entered the portal in December a year ago, he certainly could have transferred within the SEC. But he stayed with the new coaching staff after spring in April, elected to enter the portal. But by that point, he couldn't transfer within the league. Now, as I understand it, there was a lot of interest, as you might expect, in Jacoby Mathews. This is an elite prospect. He was one of the top prospects in America and played a lot his first 2 years at Texas A&M. But as I was told, the 2 schools that Jacoby Mathews out in the portal was most interested in were Ole Miss and LSU. Well, he couldn't transfer within the conference. So Jacoby didn't play football in 2024. He effectively sat out. Now, what I was told in the call, I received a phone call on Monday, and I was told Jacoby Mathews was enrolled in summer classes and taking them online here in the fall so as to stay eligible, but is planning on playing football again for the 2025 season and enrolling at a new school for the spring semester. So this could very well be a thing where LSU finally unites with Jacoby Mathews. Now, let me first say, let's first look at the LSU safety position as a need. I break down when I'm looking at a signing class or transfer portal or whatever it may be, NFL draft, I look at wants and needs and musts. What position is a want, what position is a need, and what position is an absolute must. For example, LSU this year, I would say running back is a want. You've got Caden Durham coming back, who is your leading rusher. You've got 2 elite level running backs coming in with, of course, Harlem Berry, 5-star number 1 running back in the country. JT Lindsay, the number 2 running back in Louisiana behind Harlem Berry. There's obviously the possibility of Trey Holly regaining his eligibility and rejoining LSU. That would be 4 scholarship running backs. That would be enough. Remember, you also have Juwan Johnson, who moved from defensive back to running back. So in theory, you'd actually have 5. So you're good at running back. But if you wanted to, you could add somebody there for experience or depth or veteran leadership. It's not a necessity, but it's a want. Needs. Quarterback is a need. You need to add a quarterback. You've already lost one here in Ricky Collins in this cycle. You didn't sign a quarterback in this class. You've got A.J. Swan. You've got Colin Hurley. There's no guarantee those 2 guys stay. You need to add a quarterback. You need to add a linebacker. You feel really good about West and Whit Weeks. You feel really good about Devon Keys, his progression. Harold Perkins may still come back. You need to add some more depth, though, at linebacker, especially with someone like Xavier Atkins leaving into the transfer portal. You need to add a cornerback, and it's likely that Johnson from Florida is likely going to be the addition for LSU. You've got Stamps. You've got Woodland. You've got the number 1 cornerback in America coming in DJ Pickett. So those are probably your starting cornerbacks game 1 against Clemson, but you really need to add somebody else. Offensive line, you need to add offense. You're losing 4 starters. You got plenty of bodies there, talented guys and guys who got some playing time, but you need to add veterans. Musts. When you look at musts, like this is not negotiable, you must add a wide receiver. You've got one of your top 4 pass catchers returning. You must go get an impact receiver. You must go get a tight end. Mason Taylor's gone. You have 1 tight end returning in Kamorian Pimpton, who's not even a blocker, and then a freshman coming in J.D. LaFleur. You absolutely must add a tight end. Defensive end, you're losing your top 2 defensive ends. I think Gabriel Relaford's a really good player, can be a really good player. Deshaun Womack entered the portal as well. Like, you must, this is not negotiable, must go add a defensive end. And I would throw safety maybe at the top of that list. If you look at Pro Football Focus grades from this past season, the entire LSU defense, and I always say it with PFF, it is a metric, it's not the metric. But if you look at Pro Football Focus and look at every player that played a defensive snap for LSU this year, the 2 lowest graded defensive starters for LSU are Major Burns and Jordan Gilbert. And Burns played star and safety, and Gilbert was a starting safety for you as well. Now, a lot of people like to bash on Sage Ryan, but among your starters, Sage Ryan was actually the 3rd highest graded starter. Braden Swinson, Zy Alexander, Sage Ryan, then Whit Weeks among starters. I think it's just a matter of that whenever something goes wrong for Sage Ryan at this point, it plays into the narrative that he's not a good player, and so people tend to magnify it, whereas the point I've made about Sage Ryan forever is he just played out of position. He was injured as a freshman. He played nickel. He played boundary corner. He played everywhere but his natural position of safety. This year he played his natural position. He played it pretty well. Not great, but well. You must go out of safety. And if you have a chance to go add someone like Jacoby Mathews, who was interested in you in the spring, who has been taking online classes to stay eligible, who has been in contact with LSU in this portal window, who wanted to sign with you out of high school, this might finally be the time where LSU and Jacoby Mathews can unite at a time where he's looking for a landing spot and LSU is desperately looking for help at the safety position. And they may not have to look very far with Jacoby Mathews right in their backyard. We'll see if they can push that across the finish line. But it's one to put on your radar and watch, because as I understand, Jacoby Mathews is going to play football in 2025. He's got 2 years to play 2. And LSU is very much on his list. Another player that is very much on LSU's list is one of the elite edge rushers in this portal cycle, and he's got LSU in his final 3. We'll tell you about next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So while we wait on Jacoby Mathews and others, one player's recruitment has already sped along quite a bit. Jimari Butler is a name that LSU fans may not know, but you really should get to know. So Jimari Butler is an edge from the University of Nebraska. Now, he's out of the state of Alabama. He was a 3-star coming out of high school, and he signed with Nebraska back in 2020. He's out of Murphy High School in Alabama. He was a freshman at Nebraska in the COVID year. So this is a guy who had the COVID season in 2020, then redshirted in 2021, played in 2 games, but remember the minimum to play and maintain your redshirt year is 4. So the COVID year didn't count. He redshirted in 2021. So in 2022, as a redshirt freshman, played in all 12 games, minimal impact. 9 tackles, 1.5 TFLs, but played. In 2023, as a sophomore, played in 11 with 6 starts. Now, remember, this was his 4th season in college. 11 games played, 6 starts, had 34 tackles, 8.5 TFLs, and 5.5 sacks. Well, in 2023, he's named Big Ten honorable mention All Big Ten in 2023. Again, a 4th year, but as a sophomore, 8.5 TFLs, 5.5 sacks. Comes back in 2024. This is junior year. Plays in 11 games with 10 starts, 7 TFLs, 2 sacks, a fumble recovery as well. So you have a guy here that had a really, really solid 4th year as a sophomore. Came back as a junior, got a lot of attention there with from opposing offenses as they scheme because of how disruptive he was in his 4th year. But again, still a very productive player who is now entering his 6th season in college football. So again, whenever we talk about the impact of the portal and getting impact guys in the portal, this is something worth mentioning. Okay. Whenever we talk about the money you might allocate for a defensive player, whatever the case may be, yeah, we could use Jakeem Stewart, for example. Jakeem Stewart has tremendous upside. Nobody is denying that. As I've said so many times, you want Jakeem Stewart badly. But Jakeem Stewart is an early enrollee, meaning by the time he takes the field game 1 for Southern Cal, he should be starting his senior year of high school. And by the way, he's played in 1 high school season, was ineligible as a freshman because he transferred to St. Aug, played his sophomore year at Aug. Then this year as a junior was ineligible because he transferred to Carr because he was trying to reclassify. So you have a guy that's played 1 high school season that's going to early enroll and try to be an impact player. Long-term higher ceiling, absolutely Jakeem Stewart. If you're just looking and saying, what about 2025? Give me the guy that's played 5 seasons of college football. That's entering his 6th collegiate season. Give me a guy that's 23, 24 years old. Give me that guy who in June, in this coming June, will turn 23 years old. So you're talking about a guy who will be entering his 6th year of college football, who's 23 years old, who's been an impact guy in the Big Ten, who's played in big stadiums, big games on big stages, who's got 1 season left to try to get to the NFL and blow up. Like, who would you rather in 2025? Would you rather overpay for a young guy that's probably not going to make an impact immediately, but has a higher upside long-term? Or would you rather a guy that's an immediate impact guy at an absolute position of need? That's what we're talking about with a guy like Jimari Butler, 6'5", 260. Think in terms of Savion Jones, the big physical end that can set the edge, it can help in run defense, but also is athletic enough to rush the passer. So that's one worth keeping an eye on. So Jimari Butler is a guy entering his 6th year. He's leaving Nebraska. He's got 3 finalists. It's LSU, Texas A&M, and Florida State. Now, it's worth mentioning Nick Scorton, who left Purdue for Texas A&M this year and was a very productive pass rusher, declared for the NFL draft. So A&M has a lot to sell. They've got money, and they've got a big stadium, and they got the SEC and all that sort of stuff, and they can look and say, look at Nick Scorton. Nick Scorton just came from the Big Ten and is now going to be a first-round draft pick. So they have a lot to sell, A&M does. And Mike Elko's a defensive-minded coach. But this is one of those instances that I'm going to circle this and say, okay, LSU, okay, coaching staff, okay, Austin Thomas, you all made the collective decision that you were not going to overspend on high school players. Okay. And again, I don't want this to be misconstrued, because I've been very, very consistent here. Brian Kelly has said he wants to build through the high school ranks, supplement through the portal. Fine. And they're doing that. But in 3 instances, they made the decision not to overspend relative to their cap in the revenue share for young players. Bryce Underwood, Cade Phillips, Jakeem Stewart. Okay, they chose not to overspend for those guys. Fine. But you have to go address those positions of need and want in the portal with impact guys. It can't just be a body. You decided not to go extend for Cade Phillips. You've got to go get Jakeem Jackson from Florida. You've got to go get impact guys in this transfer portal cycle. And Jimari Butler is one of the top edge rushers in this portal cycle. You want him. It's down to you, Texas A&M and Florida State. You got to go get him. We're told you're flush with cash now because you didn't overspend for those guys I just mentioned. You already had money allocated for these positions of need. Now you can add to that as well because you had the money allocated for some of those freshmen that didn't show up. Okay, prove it. Prove it. Go close on these guys. Jimari Butler is one worth keeping an eye on. So already 2 guys defensively worth keeping an eye on, as we mentioned there, with Jacoby Mathews at safety potentially, with Jimari Butler. And I'll remind you again, if you missed our previous episode, we did talk about Bauer Sharp at tight end, Luke Haas from Arkansas, Zach Atkins from Southwest Missouri State, 3 of the top tight ends in the portal. I told you tight end was an absolute must for this team. One other quick note, though, about Bauer Sharp, the Oklahoma tight end. By the way, if you missed that, it's our previous episode. Just go back and listen to it or watch it. I gave you a lot of details there. One thing that we didn't talk about Bauer Sharp, this was his first season at Oklahoma. Prior to that, he spent 3 seasons at Southeastern Louisiana. So he was a quarterback who went to Southeastern. They turned him into a tight end. They took an athletic guy, bulked him up, made him a tight end. Then he went to Oklahoma this year, and now he's back in the portal and could very well land back in Louisiana at LSU. Again, we've talked about going and getting these high-profile portal guys, not numbers. Again, this isn't building through the portal. It's not like year 1 where they went and signed 15 guys out of the portal. I'm still talking about 7 to 10 guys out of the portal this year, but 7 to 10 impact guys out of the portal, guys that step in immediately and become major contributors on your team, not just bodies. That's the difference. That's what you have to close with. I've said it over and over again. Talk to me in a month. Talk to me in a month. When this portal window closes, we'll know exactly what this 2025 team is going to look like. And those are 3 opportunities right there to add players at positions of needs and musts. Needs and musts. Key guys that you're in the mix for. Go close them. Okay, it is Locked on LSU. The portal giveth and the portal taketh away. 3 more LSU players did enter the portal on Monday. We'll talk about them next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Ah, yes. What a wonderful time of year. It's the holiday time. It's a great time to deliver comfort and joy, and nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. Have you ever gotten an Omaha Steaks gift basket? Oh, it's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with the promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. You got to check it out if you haven't. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. omahasteaks.com. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, put a button here on today's episode of Locked on LSU, and 3 more LSU players have entered the transfer portal, doing so on Monday. One of them is Nathan Dibert, and this is a little bit of a disappointing story. Nathan Dibert was LSU's kickoff specialist in 2023 and was a very, very productive player for LSU, quite frankly. He was playing 25 career games for LSU. He's even, as the kickoff specialist, he even punted at times when they needed him to. But Nathan Dibert, unfortunately, tore his ACL trying to make a tackle in the Texas A&M game at the end of 2023, and it rehabbed it and came back this season. But LSU signed freshman Aaron Burrell, who was an absolute machine. I mean, every kick from Aaron Burrell, if they wanted it out of the end zone, it went out of the end zone. The only time it wasn't an automatic touchback was when they were trying to cover a kick to pin the defense short. So you have this incredible leg talent now in Aaron Burrell coming in, who kind of Wally pipped Nathan Dibert. So it's unfortunate for Dibert, but you wish him well. He'll go somewhere else and kick, as it appears Burrell will be the heir apparent as well for all the place kicking duties for Damian Ramos whenever his time at LSU is up. J.K. Johnson also entered the transfer portal. And J.K. Johnson's another one of the really unfortunate situations, because J.K. Johnson came to LSU as a transfer from Ohio State before the 2023 season. And he was one of those guys as part of that transfer class that included Deuce Chestnut, Zy Alexander, and Denver Harris. And Johnson coming in from Ohio State, where he had played actually at Ohio State. He was a true freshman in 2021. He played in a couple games as a redshirt freshman in 2022. He played in 12 games with 5 starts. So he came here in 2023, Kelly's second year, was starting experience in the Big Ten. And we looked at J.K. Johnson as a guy that maybe was a plug-and-play starter, because remember, all the guys that you had added, Jarp Bernard-Converse, Mekhi Gardner, those guys, they were one-and-dones at LSU after 2022. So the fact that J.K. Johnson had starting experience, it was likely he was going to step in and play. Well, we know the story. J.K. Johnson suffered that lower leg injury in fall camp. He didn't play at all in 2023. It was a long process to get him healthy again. We saw him out on the practice field in fall camp, but he just never quite could crack the rotation. They tried him everywhere. They tried him at boundary corner, at nickel, at dime, and he just got passed up. So you look at it with Ashton Stamps coming back, with DJ Pickett coming in, PJ Woodland probably solidified as your nickelback for next year. Your top 3 guys are there. So if you're J.K. Johnson and you've been in college now since 2021, and next year will be your 5th season in college, you want to go somewhere that you can get on the field and play. Your time is running out. So he could certainly use a medical red shirt to get a 6th season, but he's got to go get on the field where he can get reps. And barring injury or something unforeseen, that's not going to happen at LSU. So unfortunate for J.K. Johnson, but he'll finish his career elsewhere. And then the other is Demiron Johnson. And this is an interesting story because late last week, Wilson Alexander and others from The Advocate and others reported that Demiron Johnson was entering the transfer portal. And then Demiron Johnson apparently spoke with Wilson Alexander and clarified that he had not entered the portal. So Wilson issued a retraction and an apology. Only Monday, when the portal window opened, to have Demiron Johnson enter the transfer portal. I think it's a situation that Wilson had the story right, clearly, and DeMyron didn't like the fact that someone broke his news. But it's what it is. So DeMyron Johnson, out of New Iberia from Westgate, is in the transfer portal, 6'1", 295. This was his true freshman season. He was a member of the 2024 signing class. He was a 3-star. He was the 6th best player in Louisiana, number 211 nationally by ESPN, who also had him as the 13th best defensive tackle in the country. They had him as the highest ranked. ESPN had him as the highest ranked. He was a 3-star in the on-3 composite, I should say. But this was a guy who was a project player. And when you look at the freshmen that came in, Dominic McKinley, a true freshman defensive lineman, 5-star, became an impact guy as part of the rotation. Ahmad Bro, who moved from end to tackle, bulked up, and really was an impact guy as a freshman. Those two guys have already passed DeMyron Johnson. You've got Jacoby and Guillory coming back for his 6th season. JVR Suggs also should return to LSU next year there. That's 4 players right there in that rotation that are already ahead of DeMyron Johnson. And, like I said earlier, I have defensive tackle as a must for LSU. You've got to go add another impact interior defensive lineman on that defensive line at tackle. So DeMyron Johnson probably pushed further and further. And if there's a disappointing thing about DeMyron Johnson leaving, it's the same thing I would tell you about a guy like Bernard Causey, who we talked about. And Causey was also a member of this 2024 class. But those are examples of Louisiana guys who were on the lower end of the recruiting rankings, but had an opportunity to play for the state school that they dreamed of playing for. And my contention my theory had been, a lot of those guys in the new era, especially with expanded rosters to 105, expanded scholarships to 105, would have the opportunity to play at LSU and wait. Instead of going lower level, playing for a couple of years and transferring to the Power 5, they could sign with a place like LSU, sit for 2 or 3 years until it was their opportunity to make an impact. And they would they could grow within the culture of the program. They could know the system, know the defense, know the coaches, know the strength program, all that sort of stuff, know the culture, the expectations. So there wouldn't be a transition when changing schools. But you're starting to see instances where those guys who were lower rated are choosing not to stay. And that's a little disappointing because you'd love to see those guys stay, grow, develop, wait their turn, and have the opportunity when it presented in maybe their 3rd or 4th year somewhere down the road. But the path to the field for all these guys is wanted quicker. And a guy like DeMyron Johnson, Bernard Causey, as we mentioned, are seeking that somewhere else. So for the Tigers already, double-digit players in the transfer portal. It started, of course, with Ricky Collins last Sunday, after LSU beat Oklahoma as the first to make their intention known. He was followed by Landon Ibieta, CJ Daniels, Deshaun Womack, Jordan Allen, Shelton Sampson, Kylan Jackson, Bernard Causey, who we mentioned, Jair Brown, Xavier Atkins, and now Nathan Dibert and DeMyron Johnson and J.K. Johnson, all in the transfer portal for LSU. And there will be more. It was an interesting stat that I saw earlier on Monday that in 2023, 25% of college football players entered the portal. Roughly 1/4 of everybody's roster enters the portal. So LSU with a dozen players in the portal right now, there's certain to be more. What you hope is that it's not impact guys. And as of right now, the one player you've lost to the portal that's an impact guy that you desperately wanted back because of his impact on the team is CJ Daniels. There's other guys with a high ceiling, Deshaun Womack, Shelton Sampson, high ceiling on those guys, but they hadn't made the impact felt yet. So far out of a dozen, there's one impact guy you've lost. That's a pretty good ratio so far. Got to replace it now with the players you bring in, and hopefully we start to get some of those announcements very soon. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. Thanks for making us your first listen. And now for your second listen, how about you go check out Locked on SEC with my guy, Chris Gordy. Locked on SEC available on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're on podcasts, thank you so much. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.